Good morning, everyone. Perhaps good afternoon, perhaps good evening. All depends on where you are. Welcome to day two of EI 2021. Marc, we're not hearing you again. You're muted.
Yeah, you're right. I have to tell you, I think it's going to take I don't know how many years to remember to unmute myself. But good morning, everybody. Really excited to be back here with all of you again. Yesterday, I thought was a fantastic day, and I just really enjoyed all the sessions, and I hope you did too.
So I know that people are sharing their location, which I love. We've already set a high bar with Moscow and Germany, and someone near you, Mark, Stanford.
Oh, look at that.
Um, but chime in. We love to hear it. Super fun. And let's start with a little mood meter action.
Yeah, it's funny, Matt. Yesterday, I realized that we started the conference on emotional intelligence, and we didn't even ask people how they were feeling. So most of you probably know the mood meter at this point. It's one of the key tools of OG and of Ruler, our work in schools. And so let's just take a moment and check in. Just for quick background, right? The x-axis is our pleasantness. So feeling like you're approaching the day, avoiding the day. Are you feeling comfortable, uncomfortable? And the y-axis is energy. How activated or deactivated do you feel? And then we got the yellow, the red, the blue, and the green. So can we get everybody to, let's use a feeling word this morning. So what's your specific feeling that you're coming into this day with? On the count of 1, 3, 2, 1, let's go, everybody.
Mark wants to crash the system.
Oh yeah, I didn't think of that.
No, I hope not.
Upbeat, hopeful, elated, optimistic. Focused, pleasant, enthusiastic. Comfy. Content, pleasant. Awesome. Great. So the last thing I'll just say with the mood meter is that, remember, in OG, we go from the first R to the last R. The first R is like identifying, recognizing our feelings. And then the last R is, all right, so how are we going to, it looks like most of you, we have a few people who might be tired, but we've got comfy, energized, cheerful, pleasant. As you know, this is a conference that goes on for a full afternoon or a couple hours. So the big question is, what's your strategy? Matt, what's your strategy to get the most out of our second day of our conference?
What's my strategy? That's a good question. To try to remain calm in the face of knowing that there's hundreds of people who would love to have a wonderful event, and we're responsible for delivering it. So it's about down regulating for me.
Right, because you're coming in like under that pressure. Yep.
Yep.
Other people, just take a second in the chat. It looks like most of you want to maintain how you're feeling, or at least I'm going to just assume that. Focused and pleasant and energized seems like a good place to be for a conference. I'll just share my strategy, which is I'm excited to be in conversation with Ralph in a little while. And I just gave a presentation, so I'm trying to compartmentalize and just be like, all right, Mark, you're here now. That's gone. You got a lunch meeting later. It's all good. Let's kind of take some breaths and just focus on the present moment. What strat we got? Stretching, we got yoga, we got keeping myself motivated, empowering myself. Cool. All right, thank you, everybody. Back to you, Matt.
Thanks, Mark, for leading us through that. I'm glad we could check in with each other. I thought about doing a poll, but then I felt like, it's not about measuring the group. It's about letting each person feel whatever they're feeling. So thank you for sharing, and keep track of your moods as the event goes. And I often find in some of these long meetings that when you can get to a moment where at least I really need to get up and pace around while I listen, just to kind of contain the energy. So track it through the day. So thanks for joining us. It's great to have you all here. Some of you were with us yesterday. Some of you weren't. So sorry if there's a little bit of redundancy here. But we want to just frame things for everyone and make sure everybody knows how things are going to play out. So we did our first conference, Marc and I and the OG team last August, really at the height of COVID. And I don't know the exact results, but I think if we looked at, Marc, at the mood meter check-ins from August of 2020, they were a little less activity than we have now. Yeah.
A little more red and blue.
Little more high and to the left. So it's great to hear that people are coping, and hopefully emotional intelligence and its skills and concepts are part of what's gotten you there. And now, of course, we're 18 months into this COVID explosion of sorts, and we realize that even when the virus goes away, the change will continue. I don't know how many of you are in your workplace as you have been. I know that our team is not back in the office. We tried it a little bit, but then Delta came. So much change to manage, and we want to use our 2 days together to help provide some ideas and tools that will help you all manage that change and also help make the change inside yourself that you hope will help you. So really excited to have you. We're going to have a great day today. We're going to kick it off with Marc in conversation with Ralph Keeney. Ralph has decades as one of the leading thinkers in decision science, and he's waiting backstage, so to speak, to talk to Marc and to our co-founder, Andrea Hoban, all about decision making. And of course, if you've studied emotional intelligence, you know about the intersection between emotions and decisions. And one of the best arguments, not the only argument, but one of the best arguments for why you concretely would want to improve your emotional intelligence is to help you make better decisions. So we're going to start there. Then on the theme of change, our co-founder, Robin Stern, who's a close collaborator of Marc's, we'll talk to Lisa Leahy from Harvard about change. We'll then split into two tracks and hear from leaders at Amazon and Johnson & Johnson about how they've brought emotional intelligence into the workplace, which will be really exciting, I think. And we'll also hear from Zorana Ivcevic, a colleague of Marc's, about some of the latest research into emotional intelligence. And then at the end of the day, Marc will come back and we'll see a conversation between him and Kenneth Cole, the fashion designer and entrepreneur, about mental health and where it fits in the workplace. And I froze?
I think so. At least you froze for
How
me.
am I now?
Conversation with Marc and
Okay.
so now give them who it was.
That was just my way of building up suspense, Marc. There's
That's what
like
I
a big
figured.
long drum roll leading to Marc and Kenneth Cole, the fashion designer and entrepreneur. And they'll talk about mental health. And then at the end of the day, after all the kind of speaking program, we're going to give a demo of our new product, OG Decide, which is a decision-making product. And what's really exciting is that everybody who has registered for this conference will get a copy of OG Decide when we ship it right after New Year's. So we hope you'll join us to learn more, because you'll have that to look forward in the new year. Hopefully it'll lead to some better decisions next year. So that's our day-to-day, just some technical issues. If you have problems, please go on our website, oglifelab.com, and chat with our staff. They're happy to help you with technical issues, or you can email info@oglifelab.com. So please stop by if you need anything. If you haven't used AirMeet, the system we're using to host our conference before, it acts like a conference in that you can leave rooms, enter rooms, go in and out. There's a lounge where you can chat with folks. So feel free to do that. And during the afternoon, there are some parallel tracks. You can enter and re-enter the various rooms. The good news is, because all of this is recorded, if you miss one of the sessions, you can always go back later. So you have the benefit of that flexibility. As always, feel free to chat during the conversation. If you do have questions, there's a Q&A tab that you'll see. It's right next to the chat tab. Feel free to drop in and share Q&A for our speakers. And I did mention there's a lounge area. That's a place where you can hang out and talk to other participants. If you'd like to visit the lounge, it's open during the breaks and at the end of the day. There's a couple tables, they're virtual tables where you can talk to other folks interested in emotional intelligence, if you like. There's also a table where you can talk to some of our team about OG Emotions, which is our emotional intelligence training program that you'll hear about, and also OG Decide, our new program. And just to reiterate, if you weren't here yesterday or you didn't see your emails, everybody who attends will be getting OG Decide. We're excited to offer that to you. And then also, we're offering a $50 discount for attendees to OG Emotions, our emotional intelligence training program. You can see an email what the code is and the time limit, etc. And if it's working, you may see it on the screen right now. I'm seeing it, but it's kind of chopped in half for some reason. But we'd love it if we can make it a little easier for you to try OG Emotions that's being used in corporations and organizations of all type, manufacturing, high tech, biotech, education, etc. So we're delighted to tell you more about it and hope you can enjoy it. So that's my intro. I'm excited to get off the screen and shut up. And oh, there's Marc. So I'm going to just say goodbye. I hope everybody has a terrific time today, and I'll see you at the end of the day.
Well, hi. Thank you, Matt, for all of that. And welcome to Ralph Keeney, who you're being introduced to today. Ralph is, as you can tell from his title there, a decision scientist. He's been in the field of decision science and decision analysis and value-focused thinking over the course of a very long and robust career. You might actually know him from a book on decision making called Smart Choices, a book he co-authored with Howard Rafa and John Hammond in 2002. You will often find that book on the top 10 lists of books on decision making. It's a gold standard. His most recent book is called Give Yourself a Nudge. And you can find that on Amazon or any other bookseller right now. And it walks you through a very practical approach on how to make better decisions. He is the scientific expert we recruited to help us build a decision-making program. And it's his model of decision-making that you learn in OG Decide. And so it's so obvious after spending time with him and spending time with Marc Brackett that there is this big intersection between decision-making, emotions, and emotional intelligence. And so we wanted to have this session to kind of draw the lines around that and explore what that actually means to us in our practical lives. And so I'm very excited to have you here, Ralph, and thrilled to be able to facilitate a conversation with you and Marc Brackett. I want to kick you off with a question here that sounds really basic, but because we've been making decisions our whole lives. But can you really describe in detail what is decision making and why we should care about doing it better maybe than we have in the past?
Sure. And first of all, it's a pleasure to be here with all three of you, including Matt. The thing about decisions that I think are so crucial that I didn't realize when I first heard of decisions, because we all learned something about it very young, is it's the only purposeful way you can influence anything in your life. The rest of life just occurs to you as the result of others and their actions and happenstance. So if you'd like a little control over your life, it's through your decisions. And it's easy to say, oh, no, that's not true. There's important things in my life I can do, and they're not decisions. If I decide to get more physically fit, I'll have a much better life. If I decide to eat better, I'll have a better life. If I make better if I contribute more at work, I'll have a better work life. And that's nice. But none of that will ever happen if you don't make the decisions to do it. And if you don't follow through then with the smaller decisions each time you're pursuing it. So that's why decision making is so important, I think.
Got it. Makes so much sense. Marc, can you tell us a little bit about, what your research has shown about the intersection of emotions and decision making?
Sure. So, it's funny because as I was preparing in my on my drive to work today to be in conversation with Ralph, I was thinking like he was saying, like we're making thousands of decisions every day, whether we're conscious of them or not. Do I, brush my teeth this morning? I did, just to let you know. Do I eat breakfast at home? Do I eat breakfast in the car? If I eat breakfast in the car, is my soup going to get all dirty? I mean, it's just like endless, how our brains are making these predictions, about things. And so that's where I think emotion comes in, because how we feel shifts the way we see the world. A classic study that I replicated with educators is this idea of called mood congruent decision making. And so, by way of example, I took a bunch of educators and I randomly assigned them to be in a good mood or a bad mood. It was very easy. I just said, think about a great day while you were teaching and think about a really crappy day while you were teaching. And then I asked the teachers in both groups to grade a student essay. And my research question was, would the teachers who were randomly assigned to be in different mood states make different choices and judgments about the quality of the student work? And what we found was there was a 1 to 2 full grade difference between those groups. What to me was the most interesting thing about that, because I kind of knew that from the previous literature on the role of emotion, was that when we asked the teachers at the end of the study, do you believe that how you felt had any influence over the judgments you made about the student work, 90% denied it. They said, I grade papers all the time. Like, I don't get it. Like, why would being in a good mood or a bad mood influence something that I do all the time? And so to me, what's interesting about that is that it shows that how we feel influences the choices we make throughout the day. And it often happens outside of conscious awareness. And so that's my little opening about the role of emotion in judgment and decision making.
Yeah, love it. Thank you for sharing that. It's an eye opener to that it's happening below our level of awareness all the time, and emotions are impacting that. Ralph, you also talk a lot in your books and in your work about the role of values in decision making. And I'm wondering if you can bring that into our frame here, because I think it directly relates to how we feel. And it's certainly related to making better decisions.
Yes, it is. First, I should define values the way I use them in that context. And for any decision, I consider the values anything that you care about regarding that decision. And I want to be broad in that to bring anything in that's kind of relevant. Then from those values, you can identify, now, where are the objectives about what I want to achieve by making this decision? And that's crucial, because that's the only reason you're making a decision. Your values also, everything you care about, then stimulates your thinking about what alternatives might there be to achieve what I hope to achieve. And it broadens the range of alternatives. And in either one of these situations, if you identify one value that leads to an objective that you hadn't thought of, that alone can lead to a much better decision.
Mm-hmm.
If you think of one additional alternative that you hadn't thought of that's better than any of the others, it naturally leads you to a better decision. And a lot of experiments show people can do that with a little bit of thought. Now, you don't want to do that on the decision every day of, shall I brush my teeth? The way to deal with that one, of course, is you should have a policy decision. You're going to brush your teeth or not, and you look at the alternatives, and well, I'll brush them in the morning and in the night. And in general, you follow that. If there's a great reason to avoid it sometime, fine. But you don't make that every day at the small level. And I'm sure Mark doesn't do that every day at the small level. That was just a comment. It is a decision. It doesn't have to be routine. Just follow your guideline. And but there's a lot of decisions that are important, and we all know those, but there's much, much more that are worthy of a little bit of thought. If you have 1/2 a day of work that you're supposed to make a contribution to, maybe spend 10 minutes thinking about what you really want for that contribution and how to do it better. The rest of the 4 hours are probably going to lead to a better outcome.
So, Ralph, one line I've taken from you that I've heard you say many times, and you can tell me if I'm misquoting you, but that really by our decision making is the only direct way in which we can improve the quality of our life. We're nothing but the accumulation of the decisions that we make. Do I have that right?
The first part, yes. There's nothing else you can do, but we are more than an accumulation of that, because others' decisions affect us in many things that we have no control over. But absolutely, you're right, and the spirit's right. Purposefully control your life.
Yeah. Okay. So knowing that, that it's so important because it's the direct means by which we improve the quality of our life. I'm curious, from both of your standpoints, what do you see as challenges to making better decisions? Why don't we do it better?
Well, I'll make a comment first, and then Mark probably has some great ideas. One, I don't think we recognize that, and we didn't learn and improve our decision making. Decision making's a skill, and it's like other skills. If you practice, you get better, and we don't even know what to practice on exactly. And one of the things the OG program on decision making indicates is, what is it to practice on? And all decisions have the same components: business decisions and personal decisions. The keys are, what is the decision I should address? Often we take it too narrowly. The next, what do we hope to achieve by making the decision, our objectives? Third, what are the alternatives we have? And if we consciously think about those 3 things, which set up our decision, we're in great shape. Then we want to think about, how well do the various alternatives contribute to the objectives that we want? And often there's more than one objective for a decision, and we need to kind of balance the pros and cons, think of the pluses and minuses. The great thing is the process and the components are identical for business decisions, governmental decisions, and personal decisions. And by using them on your personal decisions, not only do you improve your life, you improve those specific decisions too, but you develop better skills, which are good in work and on other life decisions. So that practice is crucial.
Yeah. Marc, well, how about you?
I have so many thoughts going on in my head right now that I can't make a choice about what to say. I'm overwhelmed with because, what came to mind immediately for me, is we've seen so dramatically in the last 5 years in our country, right? How our belief systems, coincide with our decision making. So much, I think, of our decision making is from the nurture that we got, right? The way we were shaped by the adults, and that's why I think sometimes we're not even conscious that we're making a choice. That it's not on our own volition. It's that society, our parents, and all the stuff that we've learned from Facebook and other places, right, has become part of our system, and now we're making choices, outside of conscious awareness about things. And to me, that's something that is why we need to teach decision making in schools, because I think that we're not giving people the opportunity to reflect on and to actually take ownership over some of the choices they're making, because they don't even know that they're making these choices.
Yes.
the second thing that I would say is that, going back to the work of emotion and decision making, it's kind of interesting, isn't it? When you wake up and it's a sunny day and everything feels great, you're like, yes, I'll buy it. And you swipe your credit card. I'll take it. I'll take it. And then, you go to the same mall, with your kids the same day and you're irritable. And you're like, you gotta be kidding me. That's a ripoff. Same decision, right? But one day, it's a sunny day versus a rainy day. And there's good research to show this, which is that, and this is why I think we have to be careful when we're making important life decisions, to be aware of how we're feeling when we're making those decisions. Because there's an aspect of research we call affective forecasting. A lot of our decisions can be made by the forecasts that we make about how we think we're going to feel doing it. Like, I'm not going to go to the gym because I'm going to look ugly, I'm too overweight, and people are going to make fun of me. But you're making up that story, because you're predicting, but you have not actually had the experience. And so you may be making a decision that is bad for your health and wellness based on a fantasy, because most people actually, after they work out, they feel pretty darn good. And so it's really teaching people that we make a lot of errors, in these forecasts. And if we're really sad and we look at the little mountain, we're going to judge it to be more steep or steeper, and we're not going to want to climb up the mountain. And so from my perspective, a lot of it is about self-awareness in the decision-making process.
Yeah, it's first of all, both of you have pointed out, we know that emotional intelligence is a set of skills. And I just want to again, spotlight, Ralph, what you said, that decision-making is a set of skills, that it can be learned and that we can get better with practice over time. And it's not like some inherent trait that we're born with, and that if we don't have it, we're out of luck. So that's, I think, really, yeah, go ahead.
One last thing, and I want to hear more from Ralph, but from an emotional intelligence perspective, we use our emotions to enhance our thinking, to make more informed decisions, or the other way around. But the more I've been, learning from Ralph, the more I've been really thinking about, every strategy that we use to regulate our feelings is based on a decision, right? Do I tell my partner how I really feel this morning? It's like, no, Mark, because that's not going to go good for your relationship. That's a decision, right? So please.
Or on the flip side, how many times have we made a decision that started with, well, fine then? And how well does that go? So where emotions are driving perhaps in a decision in a different direction. Cindy in the chat had pointed out to your earlier point, Mark, that she sits on a committee that reviews community nonprofit grants, and they notice they get bigger dollars on nice weather days. So they plan accordingly. And there's another comment in here, Ralph, that I thought that you could address for us too, which is one of the reasons we may not be great at decision making is we feel stuck or frozen about either the feelings we're going to have about if things work out or don't work out, or how we assess risk or address the possible consequences of our decisions. So what would you say to people that, find they accumulate alternatives and things they could do, but just feel like they can't take the action to choose one?
Well, I'd say a lot of that's more on the emotional intelligence side than on the decision-making side, although there's some things to recognize. Doing nothing or delaying are decisions along the way to your ultimate decision, and they have consequences too, and it's worthwhile thinking about. And one thing that contributes there is there's a big misunderstanding about what's a good decision. And the good decision is making the best choice given the information you have. You can decide you're just going to work. There's two ways to go. One way is usually much quicker, and you're a little bit potentially late. And both roads are fine to go on in general. You take the one that's quicker, and there's a big traffic jam, and you're much later. you didn't make the wrong decision. Most of the time, that would have been the best alternative. And it just happened that circumstance it wasn't. So you made the appropriate decision. It just had a bad outcome. And good decisions and good outcomes, or sometimes referred to as good consequences, are different concepts, and that needs to be realized. And all decisions just about have uncertainties. So sometime we're going to make some decisions and we won't have great outcomes. Investing is one where probably nobody who's ever invested in various stocks won on every single stock. It's just almost impossible. And yet they could be very good about it and made good decisions in each case based on the information that they had.
Well, Ralph, that reminds me of, our Nobel laureates, Kahneman and Tversky, right? Which was
Right.
on the intersection of emotion and decision making. Why did everybody buy when it's high and sell when it's low? Because it's not a good decision, but yet they do it.
Yeah. Not rational for
It's
sure.
true.
Yeah.
One of the things I think about decision making where emotion really affected the first, what you might call decisions people made, I've thought about it, and you're born. And all of your first decision might be you're hungry. And what do? You have your emotion says you're hungry. You have one alternative, you holler. And what happens? Usually a nice parent comes and you get a meal. Next, you holler, you're wet, and that gets straightened out. And those two probably comprise of the first 5,000 decisions you made in life. And hollering worked 5,000 times out of 5,000 times, or maybe 4,900 out of 5,000. Really worked great. And some people never got past that habit. I know people 55 years old, they get a decision problem and they holler. And that's it. And sometimes people come and solve that problem for them. And we can do a lot better.
Are you saying we're all big babies, Ralph?
I'm saying we all started as small babies, actually. And then some just get to be a little bigger ones, and others evolve much more because they're much more socially intelligent, probably.
Yeah, got it. So, Marc, how does emotion regulation factor into this? Is there a way that we could use some strategies to allow ourselves to be more thoughtful, proactive decision makers?
Definitely. I would say, think about it, when you're experiencing a lot of stress and anxiety, right, you're anticipating uncertain outcomes,
Mm-hmm.
you're anticipating danger. That's what fear and anxiety are as emotions. And so when you think about that, you're going to make different decisions when you're in that fear and anxiety state than you are when you are in a calm state. And so I think, a lot of the training that we do in emotional intelligence is to help people understand that principle, that when you're in fight, flight, freeze mode, you're not using your thinking, decision-making part of your brain, you're in your survival part of your brain. And we don't necessarily make the best choices, and unless we're running from a fire in those moments, right? We want to automatic, like the decision is danger, boom, get out. We're not, most of us, living in a hunter-gatherer society anymore. And so what I think is important, and what research shows could be helpful, is to regulate your physiology. Because what happens is that when you're feeling stress and fear and anxiety, your heart rate increases, your body temperature increases, your breathing starts getting more elevated, which kind of rehearses the fight, flight, freeze experience. And the only way to really support that from getting deactivated is by doing things like taking a deep breath, maybe taking a step back, maybe removing yourself from the stimulus for a few seconds to just bring your temperature down, bring your heart rate down, deliberately, control your breathing. So that way you can then have your cognition kind of in the best possible place to make that choice. So there's an inextricable link between strong emotions and, impulsive decision making, and more regulated emotions and more sound decision making.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Related to that, I think a great thing follows is if one can make the policy decision, I will not make a very important decision except the absolute emergency when I'm basically discombobulated or kind of in a poor position to do that. And if one could develop that as a policy and follow it, maybe you wait till tomorrow to make that crucial decision and you will be better. And it's the concepts and research that you've done and contributed to people really understanding that just clarifies that's a good policy decision to make. And the individual's under that control. And it's crucial for, let's say, raising children, among other things. Don't make a giant decision when you're really upset that affects them.
I really like that idea of a policy decision, though, because what then happens is that you're automatic. A lot of times we say we want to go, and you know this, we go from automatic, unconscious, choice making or decision making to more conscious, deliberate choice making.
Mm-hmm.
And so we get the bad habits. The automatic part of our piece of it is like, no, stop, do that. When you're who do you think you are talking to me that way? And if your automatic strategy that you train yourself to do is to kind of take the breath, right? What I was just doing this yesterday in a training I was doing and saying, right, our habit has to be not automatic, not feeling like triggered or activated and reaction, but triggered, step back, breathe, step back, breathe. That if you make that a policy, right, you're going to be more likely to make better choices. So I appreciate that.
It's like the policy decision of brush your teeth in the morning. It's maybe a little, well, both are important, but it's the same spirit. You think at a higher level for decisions that are going to occur frequently to give some guidance.
Yeah, I've heard Dr. Nina Mazar, who we met with yesterday in our conference, talk about it in the frame of like, imagine we're mountaineers. And you know how if you're going to climb Mount Everest, you're making decisions every day about how far you'll go and by what conditions you'll stop. And so you decide all of that ahead because you in the moment, you're not going to be in a position to make a very wise choice. You may be close to the point you wanted to get to, but for some reason, you're not going to make it. It's too late in the day, but you've already decided what happens in that moment. And so that kind of policy decision allows you to be more conscious and aware. Like, this is what I love about decision making, Ralph, is that, on the surface, I think it can come across as a procedural thing that we have to learn how to check certain boxes. But very quickly, it becomes really transformational when we get very clear on what it is we're trying to decide, why it's important to us, and being really clear about that as well, sets the ground floor to be able to establish many alternatives that suit those purposes in a way that maybe we'd never thought of. One thing that I was thinking about as you guys were talking just now is how yesterday morning, Niobe Way kicked us off talking about the crisis of connection. And I'm curious what connection you see to decision making and using and harnessing our emotions to make better decisions in ways that we can connect more thoughtfully or more deeply with people around us. Did you see a connection between your sphere of influence and what she pointed out to us yesterday?
Who was that question for?
Either. Both.
I didn't
ahead,
see
Ralph.
the whole thing yesterday, but one influence about that I think is crucial is most decisions people face, they have a decision problem, and they say that your car breaks down, you need to deal with it. You get a little sick, or your child is sick, you need to deal with it. A crisis comes up at work, you need to deal with it. All of those are referred to as decision problems in the vernacular, and you want to make things better. And what happens is things are going along at this level, the problem happens, drops, and then you want to get it back to where it was. and you're only getting back to where it was. What your emotions help a lot on, you have thoughts and desires and just, oh, wouldn't it be wonderful? And it would be great if I could have a vacation to another country for 2 weeks during COVID. Just saying that, then you can form what I call a decision opportunity. No problem happened that caused you to do that. So you're going along and then you think of what would make life better, or how could I make someone else's life better? That's a decision opportunity, because it has objectives, it has alternatives, and that will improve life if you can figure out a way to pursue it. And all those decision opportunities are really driven by emotions, feelings, and thoughts. What would be nice?
You know, one thing I'm thinking about is a colleague whose name is Larry Steinberg does research on decision making with adolescents. And he has done a number of interesting studies where you're talking about people and relationships. And so I think this is interesting with teenagers, right? Because reputation is such a big factor, for example, for teenagers, like my identity and who I am. And also like, you know, being popular. And so what research shows is that, for example, teenagers who get their license are going to be more likely to go way past the speeding limit and more likely to get into car crashes when there's more than two people in the car. It's and so like this pressure from the social group, you know, I got to show off, and like Zoom. And so talking about policy, Ralph, right? Um, this is how some of the policies around driving, like you can only drive with your parent or an adult in the car, you know, up until, you know, this group under this age. And that was based on research on how adolescent brains are activated, you know, in relationships. And what's interesting is that, you know, I'm 52, like, and someone like Ralph, if you and Andrea and I are driving and you're like, Mark, come on, go, go, go. I'm like, Ralph, like, shut up.
Exactly.
Right. But, you know, because of where adolescents are in their development, right, they don't say that, and they absorb that pressure, and then they take more risks and get in, you know, more life threatening circumstances. And so that's what I was thinking about, how development interacts with social to either enhance or derail us from making good decisions.
Yeah, there's actually a question that someone has posed that's along this line. It's a question that we hear a lot around this topic. Is what does the research say about making decisions by listening to your gut versus going through a more rational process? What would either of you? Well, maybe we'll start with Ralph. What do you say to that? Like, I'm just going to go with my gut.
I think most of the research indicates that on average you can do a little bit better, or more than a little bit, by consciously thinking about the decisions worthy of thought. Now, if it's not too crucial, you know, which way to drive to work and both are kind of equal, it's not worth much thought. Just do it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's totally fine. But on crucial things, I think there are many issues one would miss by, quote, just going with their gut. I don't want to say the gut doesn't give you good information, but I'd like to kind of consciously check whether I think it's given me good information in this situation.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Echo everything that Ralph said. I think that we overestimate this gut instinct, and, you know, if it's, you know, maybe if it's about like the partner that you're going to marry, right? You're going to, you know, like there's a little bit more information that's built into that gut feeling. But like going back to what I said earlier, you know, if you are someone that's prone to anxiety, for example, going with your gut may inhibit you from making a lot of important choices for your life, because that fear and anxiety will overpower your judgment and thinking. And so I wouldn't want people to not have their dreams come true because they keep on going with their gut if they have, you know, challenges with anxiety.
Yeah, amen. Thanks for that, Mark. And there's another question here from Steve who says that it feels like many of my decisions I've made in my life have been mixed or haven't been a great success. And so he thinks he's not a very good decision maker. But is that just a critical perception, or, like, how should one think about when we look in retrospect at the decisions we've made in the past? How do we use that information to improve our decision making in the future?
Well, I think a positive way to look at that circumstance is anybody can improve their decision making. If you look at the top tennis players in the world, every one of them, I think, would tell you they can improve their game. And if you looked at the top decision makers, if there were such an evaluation, they would say they could improve. So any of us can. So I would be a little more concerned and think it was worth the time to, well, what can I do to improve my decisions, which is what the OG Decision Lab is supposed to contribute to. And if I'm not that great, fine, I will get better. I even have more room to grow, but things will be better. And if I'm really pretty good, I'll still get somewhat better. So that's the way I would kind of positively look at that, and don't think you're alone. We can all improve.
Andrea, one thing that I've been thinking about, given the context for this conference, meaning mostly about the workplace, is that we really can't separate, and the research would support this, like privilege and power from decision making.
Mm-hmm.
Now, people of greater power have more opportunities to make decisions for you. And people who are of greater power actually engage in less kind behavior in general. And so, for example, there's an interesting study done by a colleague of mine, where he found that people who drive fancier cars are less likely to stop and let people cross the street. And it's interesting, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you think, well, how would having a fancy car, interact with that? But it's entitlement, right? It's like, I'm more important, I'm more special. And so for me, what that makes me think about, again, goes back to the basics of even the Emotions Life Lab, which is the self-awareness. Like people, we don't give people feedback. I don't know. I'd love to hear your perspective on how feedback can help you make you a better decision maker, Ralph, because I think we're in this weird feedback, phobic culture. We're afraid that it's going to the decisions, people are going to leave our organization if we give them any feedback, or they're going to be too sensitive to the feedback. So anyway, my point really here is that privilege and power changes the way we see the world and see people. And I think we need to be aware of that.
Very much so.
I think I don't know much about the topic you just suggested, except I think the manner of the feedback, how it's presented and everything, certainly influences how big of influence it has. I mean, if somebody gives me advice, and when I was younger, I remember a couple times, once in high school, a guy gave me some advice of how I could not get in so much trouble in school and everything. I kind of bothered some teachers and everything. And it was a friend of mine's father, and it was clear he was telling me this for my benefit only, not his. He was the head of the PTA in my town in Montana. And it wasn't telling me, quit bothering these people, they're important. It was really, I think this is useful information for you. That had a tremendous impact on me all my life. And that was just that type of advice. And I knew him all my life. I mean, he was just wonderful.
Yeah.
And did that just out of the blue. Just realized I could use that.
I think what's interesting is that people who approach feedback in a kind, compassionate way to help you grow, right, help you think critically, are going to help you make better choices in general.
Absolutely.
I'm just thinking about my development, which is, when I told my father I wanted to be a professor, he was like, why would you want to be a professor? You're going to be poor your whole life. And so I think, he was trying to influence my decision making.
Mhm.
And what I think could really be useful in our society, and of course my work is primarily in schools, is discernment, is helping people sift. I don't think we teach people how to sift the things that they're hearing. And all of a sudden, now we're in this kind of gaslighting culture where like people are just trying to make you believe what they believe, define your reality for you. And then all of a sudden you've made choices that are not good for you. And you don't even know why.
Yeah. Yeah. We have about 2 minutes left. And so I'd love to hear, one piece of advice you would give people listening to this conversation about how to be a better decision maker today. What's one thing they can do to be better today? Ralph?
I think there's two parts of that. The one thing they can do is decide, okay, I understand it's a useful skill. I think I can improve on it. I will make the effort to do that. And that would be a good thing you could do today. Now, no decisions get better instantaneously from that thought. But if you then pursue that, that was a policy decision. If you pursue that, you will get better and make better decisions. Because we're all starting from almost ground zero. We're not starting as very, very good, so it's going to be tough to improve. We can all improve, and it's not going to take a lot of your time or effort, and you'll save time in the long run. One of the benefits.
Wonderful. Marc, anything you would add?
Just going back to the work that we do is try to be emotionally self-aware, before you're making certain decisions. And I think it's important for me to clarify that it's not that the teachers that were in the good or bad mood, like that it's the good or bad mood that influence. It's the lack of awareness of being in a good or bad mood. You can be in any mood and actually make a good choice as long as you are clear about how you're feeling and attribute it to its real cause, rather than it having that subconscious influence on the other outcome. So by just labeling your feelings, like with our tool, the mood meter, I think it will grossly influence your decision making.
Yeah. Well, thank you both. There's so many questions that we didn't even get to, but really appreciate the conversation going on in chat. And you can see there's a lot to unpack here around our decision making, how automatically we do it, and what can come of being more intentional and proactive about our decision making moving forward. So thank you both. We are about to head into a session with Lisa Leahy. So we will conclude this. Thank you both, gentlemen. And we'll see you soon for Lisa Leahy. Thank you all.
Thanks, Ralph.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
Ditto. Thanks, Andrea.
Yeah. Thank you.
Bye.